to the class. There we go. Hopefully you guys can see my screen, and I do have 2 or 3 other people signed up. But I'll just kind of allow them to come in because I love to be able to start on time. So you're in the right place if you're here for cultivating calm and clarity. We're going to be talking about a really cool topic. This is one of the first ones that I've done focused on a particular health condition or a particular health issue, depending on your perspective. And so I've tried to organize the essences based on the kind of topics or themes that I see come up most often. And it's really, really cool that there's so many essences that are really targeted toward making things a little bit easier on us and really kind of enhancing our natural gifts, which of course is what I hope that all essences do. But we're going to be doing some mini healings as well. No, go ahead. Please do. I can't actually see any video for some reason, so. Oh, now I can. Okay. I can see you ladies. There we go. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so there will be time for questions. Toward the end, there will be time for questions. And so you're welcome to come on video at that time, or you can just pop them in the chat and then I'll review it then. I have a little bit of these symptoms of ADHD myself, and I can't do presentation plus Zoom plus checking the comments as I go along. So the best place is to kind of put them in the chat as they come up, and then I can look at them later on when there's time for questions. And I always like to allow for lots of space if you guys have questions about any of the essences or any of the stuff that we're covering. And so let's look at our schedule. So we're going to be talking about what vibrational essences are, just in case these are new to you or in case you haven't had the chance to use them yet. We're going to be talking about how they work, and we're going to be talking about how to use them. So really practical ways to use them. And it's not your traditional, just take a couple drops orally and like you're good to go. These are really creative ways to kind of incorporate them into your day-to-day and really make them part of your lifestyle, which, you know, people may or may not be surprised to hear that I use vibrational essences every day. My family uses them every day. If I'm out and about, I'm in the grocery store and my toddler needs one, like there are some key essences I always have on hand because they're so powerful at really taking that nervous system down and really supporting our mental and emotional states, which, as you can imagine, toddlerhood, they don't necessarily know how to manage those aspects. So I really want to encourage you through these practical applications of really finding ways to use them as often as you need to, and you know, maybe even just occasionally if that's how often you need them. And we'll be talking a little bit about how often to use them as well, which I think is really important. And then of course, in addition to kind of the foundational aspects of vibrational essences, we'll be talking about some of the key essences for supporting ADHD health and well-being, because of course that's why you're here. So I have 16 essences that I'll be talking about. And then what I consider one of the most fun parts, which is the mini healing sessions. And so I've selected kind of at random, but also intuitively, I've chosen 3 essences that I think will be really supportive as we go along. And it'll be really fun to have you experience them alongside me. Even though we're at a distance, there really are no limits, especially in the quantum field and these quantum energies that we are currently experiencing. I won't be surprised if you experience something as a result of these. And one thing I just recommend is that you set your intention to receive any healing benefits that you need to receive. And if you are perhaps not in alignment with an essence that will be trialing, then you can just set your intention that you don't need to receive it or you're not interested in receiving it. So there's no pressure or there's no kind of requirement to participate in these healing sessions. I just offer them as a fun way to try and experience something new. So there will be 3 essences as we go along that we can experience. And of course, it's always good for me to include a little disclaimer, and that is that vibrational essences, and I use the term vibrational and I've mentioned this before, but I use the term vibrational essences because it covers more than just flowers. And so as our consciousness has increased, also our access to certain essences has increased. So this includes gem essences and crystal essences, which funny enough, I haven't included any in today's presentation, but if you look at some of my prior webinars and workshops, there are a ton of different essences. I almost always, when it comes to a custom blend, include at least 1 or 2 gem essences as a way to stabilize the blend. So I'll talk more about that, but vibrational essences are considered complementary approaches or therapies. They should never replace professional medical or psychological advice. Always consult your qualified healthcare provider or practitioner if you have any questions about using essences. I like to get the nitty-gritty out of the way. I am probably not new to many on this call, but I am an award-winning RHN, registered holistic nutritionist, and a bioresonance practitioner working online and in person since 2013. I'm also a certified flower essence practitioner, and I've been using essences personally for over 14 years. I am the founder of Inner Plant Wisdom, where I craft high vibe essences for people, pets, and plants. And so no surprise, if you've done any workshops or webinars with me, you may want to grab a pen and a notebook because I like to pack in as much information as possible. I don't want you to leave here feeling like you really didn't get a lot about what essences are or what they do. And obviously in the interest of time, I'm really kind of compressing this so that we're just talking about some of the highlights. There's a lot of detail and nuance that we could go in on this topic and just on vibrational essences in general, but I try to include as much information as I can in the time that I've allotted for this. So if you need a notebook or some water, there's still time. I always like to have my water because there's a lot of talking. What are vibrational essences? Hopefully you've had a chance to use them, but if you have not, these are energized water infusions that contain specific frequencies. They can be made from flowers, gems, and other materials. And that's why I started using the term vibrational essence rather than just flower essence, because it seemed a bit out of resonance to not include crystal and gem essences, which I consider to be a really important part and inclusion in our materia medica when we're looking at flower essences. And so these vibrational essences capture the life force of the item or its vibrations. And one thing I really want to be clear about is that vibrational essences are very different from herbal tinctures and other kind of herbal based products. And this is because they don't include any physical matter. So they don't include any of the plant roots, the plant bark, plant stems. Any of the physical matter is not in the actual essence, is not part of the product. It is made, if we're talking about a flower essence, it's made with just the flowers. The flowers are floated on the water. The flowers are removed, and all you're left with is the water that has been energized by the sun and transmitted that vibration into the water. And of course, water is able to really hold on to that vibration well. And then it's stabilized with some kind of alcohol typically. So that's things like brandy traditionally, and that's often what I use. You can also use vodka. And of course, for the little ones and for pets, typically we use glycerin. You can also use apple cider vinegar if alcohol is something that you're trying to avoid. Some people believe that you can drop some of the alcohol stabilized essences and just drop them into hot tea. But if you're a recovering alcoholic or you're someone who avoids alcohol for other reasons, then there's lots of other options. You just have to kind of specify that. Typically the ones you buy in the store obviously would be stabilized with alcohol. That's the standard. But with any of the essences that I make, you can always specify what you want to use as the stabilizer instead. You could, in theory, you could just use the water itself, but water can be somewhat volatile. So I always recommend some kind of stabilizer. But it's basically 3 ingredients: the water itself, the frequency, which is not really an ingredient, and then the stabilizer. So the cool thing about vibrational essences is that a lot of people think that this is new, but these have been around for a long, long time. They have a long history of use, and they date back to at least the 12th century that we know of, and possibly even earlier. And so one of the kind of stalwarts or people that used essences in a really unique way was in the 12th century, and that's Hildegard von Bingen, who was German. And she did something really cool, which was to actually create dressings. So she was a nun, and she created dressings where she would drop aspects of the flowers into the dressing and then wrap them all around the person so they'd be used topically. Paracelsus was someone else who also would capture the dew. I think they both had a similar way of, that was their way of making flower essences, but they would capture the dew from the flowers in the morning, and they would use that for their healing benefits. So they're not used in the same classic way that we use them now, but there are lots of examples and very specific history of using these for many, many centuries. So those are two to look up if you're curious about kind of the historical or more ancient ways of using these. And then they become more popularized and modern with Dr. Edward Bach, and that was around the 1950s. So I'll be talking a lot about some of his essences as well. And I love to include his essences because they are widely available. So if you're not buying from a company like me or from someone who makes them, the Bach essences are great because they're available in just about any health food store. So vibrational essences are an amazing complementary therapy because they're natural, they're gentle, they're non-invasive, and also they're effective. So it's great to be natural, but also the fact that they're effective is why I love them so much. And of course, as I mentioned, they're very different from essential oils and herbal tinctures, and that's primarily because of the lack of physical plant matter in them. So that's one way of differentiating them. The essential oils are obviously the concentrated plant oils. Herbal tinctures use the physical plant matter to make aspects of these tinctures, but essences are very different. As they say, you have to experience them to see the differences. And how do vibrational essences work? So there are so many possible interpretations of this question, but two of the kind of perspectives that I look at are just talking about essences working very well on different aspects of health. Some of them do work on the physical level, and we can apply them topically, for example, for a bug bite or an insect bite. And then other essences, the vast majority of essences, are really specific and targeted to emotional and mental aspects. And why is this important? It's because, and this is one of the key tenets of flower essence therapy, is that all physical health ailments, complaints, and issues often start out as uncomfortable emotional experiences, patterns, traumas that are left unaddressed and unresolved. So that aspect of being unaddressed is really important because if you've explored trauma at all, you've probably learned that trauma to one person may not be trauma to another person. So something that I may consider traumatic may not be considered traumatic to you. So it's all in how we interpret and how we process that. And so often trauma lies in the body, it physically lies in the cells of our body. And so essences are so cool because they essentially just uplift those emotional aspects, and they are able to be eliminated through the body. And that really depends on kind of how you look at the different energy systems. You could look at it from an Ayurvedic perspective if you're looking at the chakras. And that's primarily the way that I look at flower essences, because so many essences can be kind of identified or associated with specific chakras. So if you are looking to work on your second chakra, for example, we look at certain essences that might be helpful for either increasing the energy in that area, decreasing the energy in that area, and just kind of shifting things as well. But the important aspect is that aspect of not being addressed or unresolved. And this is true of so many traumatic experiences, is that we may process part of the trauma, but then there's still that aspect that, you know, maybe we haven't been able to resolve with talk therapy or other kind of conventional methods of dealing with a traumatic experience. So the most important thing to remember, if you're interested in kind of how the system works, is really looking at flower essences as a way of removing the emotional and mental patterns that are contributing to any of these physical health ailments. So if you have a specific health ailment, we'll take ADHD, or you could use just about anything, even a sore throat, for example. We can start to look at some of the emotional aspects related to that. Is it an inability to speak your truth? Is there, are you not getting your needs met in another way? So these are ways that the emotional aspects can really come to play. And so this is kind of self-evident, but every flower, plant, animal, gem offers specific healing frequencies. These frequencies are going to resonate with the physical body, and they're going to encourage it to self-regulate or rebalance. So this is not something that we're consciously thinking about when we take an essence. There are things that come up that we may need to process. There are things giving us an opportunity really to kind of explore how we feel about something, and sometimes just that awareness itself. And I really think flower essences really excel in that area, but just increasing our awareness of where there may still be a difficult emotional or mental pattern that needs to be released. And then of course, that interplay, that connection between the essence and the body encourages it to return to a state of ideally optimal. We're always working toward optimal physical, mental, emotional, and or spiritual health. And that's not to say that flower essences are guaranteed to bring us to health, perfect health. Obviously, health is various shades and various layers, but I do think that flower essences are a tool that we can use with just about any physical health ailment or condition. So even if we don't necessarily think like a broken leg, for example, oh, how could flower essences possibly help with that? But it can help with the stress and the trauma, the pain that's associated with that condition. It can help with the bone healing itself. I'll be talking about one of the essences that we may find that very helpful for is something like comfrey. And obviously that's not, it's more of an acute example compared to something like ADHD. But there are lots of ways to use these essences. So don't just think that because the essence, the way I'm describing it today is really from the perspective of ADHD, that we necessarily have to think, well, that essence can only be used for that, because every essence has a really kind of vast and broad perspective in terms of its use. So lots of different ways to use these, which dovetails nicely into my very practical explanation of how do we use these essences. And as I mentioned, the classic way that we would use them is to drop them or spray them into the mouth. And typically, most of the time we drop them. We do like 3 or 4 drops, and we do that 3 to 4 times a day. So that's the classic way that Dr. Bach recommended. And you can kind of see in the picture there, that's probably a Bach essence. That was their prior packaging to what they are using now. Very similar to that, actually. And another way to use essences, and if you've used essences, you might have tried this way as well, is to just add a couple drops to water and take a sip. And so keep in mind that if you're using flower essences with water, every sip is considered a dose. I think that's really important. Ask me how I know, because sometimes it's very fun to put some flower essences in your water and you kind of forget what you're doing, and you might take 4 or 5 doses in a very short period of time, and you will feel the full force of that essence on your body. And one essence that I did that with is holly, which is an essence for love, but also the aspects that are a little bit more frustrating. And so there's anger associated with this, and there's a lot of kind of emotional and mental patterns, kind of the flip side of love. And I remember I took a couple too many doses of that once and had a very profound and instant reaction. So it's always fun to experiment. And the third way that I'm mentioning on here is to take a deep breath and breathe in. And that's the way that I'll be using these today, because it's actually one of my favorite ways. It's not a way that a lot of people know about. It's actually a way that I learned about through Sue Lily's book, The Essence Practitioner. And so the way that she uses it is just, she drops 3 or 4 or 2 to 3 drops probably in her palm of her hand. She rubs them together, and then she literally breathes in. And she says it's actually the fastest way to introduce it to our nervous system, but also to our olfactory system, which carries the essence throughout our body without having to do any processing or, for the body to be able to recognize the frequency in order to use it. So it's one of my favorite ways, because it is like an instant pause. And it's very easy to obviously control your dosage that way as well. So I'll be doing it later and sharing it with you. So a couple other ways that are fun. You can apply essences to your pulse points. Obviously, you could use traditional Chinese medicine points. You could use chakra points. You could use touch for health points. Any kind of points that you're comfortable with or know of. This is a great way to use them topically. And because this is such a field that's really in development, there may or may not be new ways that you discover to use these. And so that's also really fun too. You may find that energy is moving in a different way depending on how you use them. So taking them in, breathing in the essence, if you're taking them orally, and if you're physically moving energy on your body, it's such a great option for people like massage therapists, osteopaths, other people who are doing physical body work. Cranial sacral therapy would be amazing way to use some of these. And you can use essences to a favorite lotion. So if you're putting in a lotion, you're just putting some on your body, that would be considered a dose. And cream, any kind of topical material like that. And then we can use essences in a bath or with any meditation practice. So that's really fun. And the way that Bach recommended was 7 drops to a bath. So that's kind of a general rule of thumb for something like that. And in meditation, of course, you could use it, breathing it in, you could use it on your pulse points, you could use it in any of those ways. But it's just fun to think about the day-to-day ways that we could start to use these. I think something also that's important to mention, something that, whether or not ADHD is a condition that we personally are experiencing, or if we're possibly thinking about using these essences with children or with other people in our household, I think it's really important to still have permission. That's something that is a foundational aspect of my work, because obviously as a bioresonance practitioner, I'm sending frequencies at a distance all the time. I'm doing scans, I'm sending essences to people. So I think it's really important to always have permission, even if in our heart of hearts, we're just trying to help somebody. It is important to talk about what we're doing and why we think it might benefit them. And that's kind of a key point that I want to just kind of mention, just because I think it is important to always have permission and to not be trying to resolve someone's life path or their soul's purpose as a way to eliminate harm or to relieve suffering, because there may be a life lesson in there that they're intended to learn. So as part of the permission aspect, it's, these are so powerful in families, kids, all ages really, but permission's great too. Great and important. How long do I need to use essences? So of course that depends on a lot of factors. As I mentioned, if you're using essences in a physical way, you may just use it acutely, a couple drops, rub it together, and you don't need to use it again. The insect bite is no longer a concern. If you're using it for more chronic conditions like ADHD, which is obviously the focus tonight, traditionally you're going to use a blend, or ideally in this case you're using a blend, but you could also use a single essence. You're going to use it for at least 14 days and up to 21 days. A good kind of rule of thumb to consider is that if you forget to take your essence, you probably don't need it anymore, or it's time to reassess. So maybe you still need essences, but maybe you just kind of need to tweak the blend, or you need to try something new. But generally, if you forget to take it, it's a good reminder, like, hey, that's my body's not craving it. I'm not needing it in the same way that I needed it before. And So now we're talking about key essences for ADHD health and well-being. We're talking about 16 different essences, and I've kind of loosely organized them by category, and these are kind of some of the main categories that I think are important to consider and look at. And I've just categorized these in the way that I sense them and feel them, but very easily these could belong to multiple categories, as you'll see. And so comfrey is our first one, and as I mentioned, it's kind of a common one that you may have heard of because it's also called knit bone. So I mentioned it for bone, like a broken leg, because it's the knit bone aspect is really good for bone health in general. But as an essence, its primary um, aspect that it works with is the nervous system. It supports both brain and nerve communication, and it's very good at actually communicating and redirecting the impulses between left side of the brain and the right side of the brain. So it really has a balancing effect on the entire brain. This would be kind of one of the core essences we might start to consider for ADHD. And some of the very specific things that it is known for is enhancing memory, studying, and learning new concepts. And so FIG is another one that I want to talk about. Again, this has a really cool and powerful effect on the nervous system, and also those connections between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. It can help us release energetic blockages and fears at the mental level. And so this would obviously be one where it would have quite limited effects on a physical level, but a very strong kind of clearing ability at the mental level and also the emotional level. And one thing that it's especially good at is helping us find lost items. So if we tend to be a little bit forgetful, this is an essence that we can use to kind of jog our memory. And it does that primarily because it's accessing the subconscious mind. And so forsythia, you may have seen this one out and about, maybe in your yard or nearby. I love that it's a local essence that grows readily near us. One thing that's really neat just about the energetic or the appearance of forsythia is that the flowers appear, and you can kind of see in this shot, this would be like early spring. There's very limited leaves there. There might be like one or two kind of just starting, but it's kind of unusual to have a bush or a tree of this size not to have any leaves on it, because typically the leaves would appear first and then the flowers would follow. But with forsythia, the flowers appear first, several weeks at least before leaves. So it kind of reminds us that aspect of being distracted and being able to focus our intention, which is obviously one of its keynotes. And so it helps us focus our attention, and it helps prevent us from being distracted and having our mind go in all different directions. I think of forsythia as like pulling us in this way and that way and this way, and we're just not sure which way to go. It also has a unique ability to actually enhance our energetic boundaries. So it enables us really to be clear in like, what's my energy and what's somebody else's energy. And because of that aspect of helping us focus our attention, it can help us follow through on specific instructions and tasks. This is very good for goals as well, but specifically that aspect of preventing distractions is what it's most known for. And this is a unique one. And some of these essences work on much more of a strengthening aspect. Some of them are more catalytic, and some of them are more powerful kind of releasing type essences. But this one is more about releasing energy powerfully through the body, less so about some of the more kind of strengthening and supportive aspects. And so you'll see some of those essences that are a little bit more gentle on the body. Habanero pepper is not one of them. It's quite powerful at moving energy, especially through the lower chakras. And so some of the things that it's known to do are to help focus the mind, and it helps people think clearly. It helps reduce forgetfulness, absent-mindedness, and an inability to focus. And it promotes stability and balance in the physical body. So if you're someone who, along with ADHD, has any symptoms of kind of being disconnected or not necessarily knowing where the edges of your physical body are, so if you bump into things or if you stumble or you trip, habanero pepper is an essence that can help actually bring back some of that balance in the physical body and some of that connection. It's a little bit of a grounding essence because it's working on the lower chakras, but that's going to be one that we're going to experience later. Just lining up my little essences. And so another one that I want to talk about as part of this concentration and focus category is sundew. This is an Australian bush essence, and it's really neat because it's a carnivorous plant, and then it sends up this tiny little shoot with the flower on it. It's very, it's very, I wouldn't say it's a scary plant, but you can sense its power just from the pictures of seeing it. And if you just Google the sundew and like see what the plant looks like, it's very unique looking compared to things that would typically grow in our climate. And this is a great essence for people who are unfocused and disconnected. It helps people get grounded. We all need more of that. And it helps people pay attention to details, which is so helpful for ADHD. And if you're kind of getting lost in some of the day-to-day of what you need to accomplish or get done, this can kind of help us hone in and really just put our focus back on what do I have time for and what do I not have time for. And the last one I think in this category is white chestnut. And I typically like to mention if they're Bach remedies, that will give us an idea of whether or not they might be a little bit easier to access for most people, both in Canada or in the US. They typically are found in most health food stores, which is wonderful. And they are a UK brand, but they are fully international. This is a great one that I use all the time for sleep and for tantrums. It helps reduce mental chatter when we have repetitive or anxious thoughts. So that's really a keynote of white chestnut, is eliminating that repetitive aspect. If you're going to bed and you're thinking about something happened, if you're going to bed and thinking about something that happened that day and your mind is just whirling this idea of like, what could I have done differently? And what could I do differently next time? And, oh, you know, what was that really about? And you're kind of analysis paralysis a little bit. White chestnut is such an excellent essence for that. It's also in the brand or the product that Bach sells called Rescue Sleep. And so sometimes they have, I don't know if it comes in a dropper bottle. I've never used it that way, but I know it comes in a spray bottle, Rescue Sleep. And then it also comes in these little lozenges, or no, they're not really lozenges, they're the soft gel capsules. And so the soft gel capsules are what I've used for probably 10 years. And they come in like a little pack and a little blister pack. So if you can find those, I like those because it's, you know, a set amount and you just take one and good to go. But if you think that you might need this more often in the evening, like this could be something you could take, you know, even 2 to 3 times before bed. It really helps us relax. It helps kind of establish that baseline of just feeling a little bit more tranquil and settled, and just really specifically working on the mind. So that kind of monkey mind, whirling thoughts, if there's a repetitive aspect to it, white chestnut is the one that I would automatically reach for. And so I think we're at our first, oh, it was supposed to be comfrey and I could not find the comfrey. So we're doing habanero pepper instead. I had hoped to use the comfrey, but I don't know where it got to. So for this little aspect, you are welcome. If you're not sitting in a place where you're kind of settled, you are welcome to put your feet flat on the ground. This is just a great way of helping us ground. And sometimes these energies can be really strong and powerful. So even for these sessions, like if I have slippers on that have a leather sole on them, I always take those off because I want to try and be as grounded as possible, even though, of course, we can't necessarily ground indoors in the same way. If you have like concrete in your basement, or if you have a place that's a little bit more connected to the earth, that's a great way to do it. I also have this giant stone that's flat. I always keep it under my desk as a way to just ground really with nature. And so I welcome you to have your feet flat on the ground. And I'm going to show you the way that I typically am using the essences in the inhalation method. So I'm just going to do 2 drops because, as I mentioned, this is quite a powerful essence. And actually, I'm not inhaling it this time because I'm sending it to you. And so you're welcome. You can close your eyes, set your intention to just receive the benefits of this frequency. I can just feel how intense this essence is. And this is just using it topically. I didn't even bring it up. to my face. My hands are so hot. It's like the circulation is just like running the blood through my hands. So you're more than welcome to take these energies if you feel they may benefit you. It's a really interesting essence for clearing out some of the lower chakra stuckness and blockages that can kind of present in the body. Sometimes I put a couple more drops in when I'm sending these, but this one is so powerful. I don't I want to be able to sleep tonight. So hopefully you get some benefit from that, because that is definitely one that has a very physical, but also you can feel the emotional aspects of it as well. But it's a very physical essence. And so that was our mini healing session with habanero pepper. And our next category, I've just included 2 in this one. And again, I could have thrown these in the focus and concentration category, but these ones are kind of specific to patients, and I just felt like they needed their own home. Black-eyed Susan is this essence. It's an excellent essence for people who are always on the go, go, go. So people who have a problem slowing down. Oftentimes in flower essences, we're talking about the types of people this might benefit. Sorry, I'm that that habanero pepper is quite strong. I feel like if I take my feet off the floor, they're gonna float away. Black-eyed Susan helps reduce the tendency to rush and overcommit specifically. So if you're always saying yes to everything, even if you know that you either don't have the capacity for it or you just didn't put it in your day timer, which is pretty common with ADHD, that aspect of organization and planning. But if you've just realized like, oh, hey, I have said yes to too many things, Black-eyed Susan can be a great essence for helping us kind of calm down and remind ourselves of what we actually have the capacity to do and not do. And so as a result of that, it helps people slow down and find their inner center. This is another great choice for insomnia. And as I mentioned, if you're kind of working on any of these aspects, if sleep is, one of the places where your ADHD shows up most often, it's a great idea to do a blend that would include some of these key essences, just a way of helping us calm down and relax and shut off that monkey mind. So I wouldn't necessarily use this, as a single essence just for this purpose, but doing a little blend of between 4 and 7 essences is usually a good place to start. Bach always recommended no more than 7 essences, and I find with most of my blends, because of the potency that I'm making them at, I'm typically not including more than 4 or 5 essences in, because they really make an impact. And I don't want to give the body too many frequencies that then it's having to sort through, and they're, in such high potency that it really throws the system off balance. I want to work with it gently and give it kind of clear instructions of what those flower essences are meant to do. So Impatience is our next essence. You've probably seen this one. If you've used Bach essences if you've used Bach essences at all, this is one that you'll find in most health food stores. It increases patience, which is a great way to remember. I love it when the name also matches its main uses. It reduces restlessness, both in the physical, the emotional, and the mental body. It helps reduce impulsive behaviors. So if we're not necessarily thinking about what's going to happen, this is a great one for children as well, great for school. And great for anyone with a short attention span or anyone who feels anxious or nervous. And so for motivation. And like I said, these are kind of the way that I've categorized them, but there are lots of other ways to use these essences. But Hornbeam, one of my favorites, if you've watched any of my other webinars or workshops, Hornbeam holds such a special place in my heart, because it was the essence that I used after my dad died, and I was in a state of apathy, probably near depression, didn't have motivation to do anything. And of course, when someone dies, there's so much paperwork and so much to do. And this was the essence that kind of brought me out of that and said, like, okay, what do I have time for? And what do I really need to get done? What paperwork do I really need to file? And it just kind of gave me a bit of boost. Bach described this one as the Monday morning blues, or the Monday morning blahs, right? It's that survey or that statistic saying that there are more heart attacks on Monday morning than at any other time or day of the week. And it's that like dread of going to work. So that's how they kind of frame or describe hornbeam. And obviously, you know, based on this example, it helps motivate us, it's energizing us, especially if we're tired. So there's that state of apathy and depression that I mentioned, and it just gave me the energy to just start doing something, just kind of putting one foot in front of the other. And it was really, really powerful. And I, you know, it had been weeks that I'd been in that state, and just a little bit of hornbeam, maybe used it for 3 or 4 days, and suddenly I was like, oh, like I definitely had not returned to my old self, but I was making strides at least to start moving forward in my new life, because my role as a caregiver had come to an end. So hornbeam is an essence that helps us tackle obstacles. We're having a hard day, we're having a difficult experience. Hornbeam is an essence that I would automatically reach for. It's a great one along with things like oak if you're feeling tired, and it's just going to start moving us in that direction. And I want to mention this one too, because a lot of aspects and symptomatic aspects of ADHD stem around the idea of like goals and planning and organization. So red maple can be an excellent essence for that. And if you're feeling a bit low because you're not seeing the success that you expected, you reminds us not to lose faith that things will work out. And I love red maple because suddenly creative solutions that we never would have thought about give us specific action steps. So it's not just, hey, I have a bit of a solution to this problem. It's giving us the actual action steps to start taking. So really kind of leading us in that path of, hey, how are we actually going to get this done? Not just, this is my idea and this is what I have in mind, but some specific action steps. And red maple, if you haven't tried this one, this is one that I offer. Well, I should specify I offer all of these, but this is one that I make. And I remember doing a trial at a women's group that I was a part of, and just 1 drop, 2 drops on the tongue, and people were instantly grounded. So such a nice way to start in ceremony, just a way of kind of like bringing your energy down, settling the mind, settling the body. If there's any kind of, you know, restless movement, the energy of the tree essences, and red maple is obviously a tree essence, the energy of the tree essence is just very different from flower remedies that are from, you know, smaller plants. So it's something to consider too, is that a lot of the tree essences have a special aspect of grounding that we can't get from other essences. Courage and confidence, I just included 2 in this one because this may or may not be something that applies to you, but I always love to include borage. Again, another beautiful local essence, a plant that grows in our climate, my climate at least. And it's a great essence to empower us with the confidence and the courage to do hard things. I picture it like a superhero cape that we put on and we could just do anything. And it's great, especially if we're feeling a little bit depressed or we're feeling a bit low, we're feeling like we don't have what it takes. Little borage on the tongue, and suddenly you're reminded of what your real skills and talents are. And it gives us, motivation is not the best way to describe it, but really the confidence, the courage. And I think I mentioned earlier that there are different types of essences. So this is one that's a bit more strengthening and supportive. So you really feel nurtured and held with this essence. Some of the other ones are more clearing essences or more focused on, you know, releasing tremendous amounts of energy, and they could be a little bit harder to sustain. But borage is one that you could take every day. And it's great as a single essence. It's also really great in a blend as well. All of these would work well in a blend. Missouri primrose, and again, this is like not the obvious ones that we might pick for ADHD, but I just think that this is such an important kind of complement to a lot of the aspects that we're looking at, because we may be bullied or we may have a lot of external influence from other people who don't necessarily agree with the way that we're managing ourselves. And so Missouri primrose can be It's a very simple looking primrose, but it's a great essence to boost our self-image, our self-confidence, and our self-esteem. It's really known for those aspects. And in the same kind of vein as that, it helps us open up to receive more of that physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual nurturing. So just like a little bit of a hug, self-care, it's opening us up and allowing us really to receive things from other people. So someone compliments you on a job well done, it allows us to really open up to that and be like, oh, thank you for that compliment, rather than, oh, it was nothing, or anybody could have done that, or whatever our typical reactionary responses might be. This one's really focused on nurturing. And no surprise how much I've used this one, because the bottle is nearly done. So I will need to restock that one soon, but I always like to leave at least a couple drops in there just for those times where we absolutely need a little bit of that energy. But in the same vein, it also supports motivation, organization, planning, and thinking related activities. So there are lots of ways to kind of approach this when it comes to ADHD, but it's really good at giving us the drive, because suddenly we're feeling more confident. So, a perfect example of how you might use this essence is you're looking to do a live on Instagram or some other place where you have to show up, hey, something like this. Perfect example. You're showing up live to do a webinar. And so you want to have some self-confidence, you want to feel comfortable. There's a frequency that I use in my bioresonance technology called Aura Builder, and it basically just beautifies your energy field so that when people are interacting with you, they see you as this, super confident, beautiful, creative person. And so Missouri Primrose would work in a similar way of helping boost that self-confidence. And then as a result, you're also motivated to do your webinar. You increase your ability to organize it, plan it, and then all those aspects around thinking. So there are a lot of brain related essences, obviously, in this webinar, but it's not the typical way that you might think of brain health. So we just want to be able to support the brain in multiple different ways. And we have one more healing. So if this is an essence you feel that you could benefit from, you're welcome to put your feet flat on the ground again and kind of center in your body. Just re-anchor yourself. You can take a couple deep breaths. I'm going to share this one with you. It's very special since there are so few drops in here. And I'm just doing 2 drops and rubbing it together. And if I was using this for myself, I'll use it for myself and for you. You just rub it between your palms of your hand. And you're going to breathe in that essence directly. And you can feel it actually affect your energy field right away. And then I'm going to send it to you. And I'm going to let a person in. And so I'm going to send you this essence. This is a great one for feeling like you're just getting a bit of a hug and feeling super comfortable. Such a really beautiful way. It feels like as if you just have a direct connection to the divine. Like it's just so beautiful at really those aspects of self-care. And the other one I do want to mention, I didn't include it in here, but it's one of my favorites, which is red clover, and it has a similar aspect of Missouri Primrose, just from the perspective of self-care and self-love. And it is so effective at just helping us feel held, and it really kind of activates the female ancestors to help take care of us. So evening primrose and Missouri Primrose, I don't know why I said evening primrose, but Missouri Primrose and red clover are 2 great ones for that aspect of self-care and self-nurturing. So hopefully you enjoyed experiencing that one. Yeah, it's just such a strengthening and stabilizing type of essence. And so we have our last category of essences. And again, a lot of these essences could be put in other places, but this is kind of the place where I put them. So this is where the wheels kind of fall off the wagon. Is more kind of critical states that we might want to use essences. And in these cases, we may not be needing to use them for the full 14 to 21 days. You may just need to use them, you know, kind of in the example that I gave around hornbeam and those aspects of just kind of that acute scenario of needing to get going. You might just use that for 3 to 5 days. So these are some examples where you may not need to use the essences as often as well. And so elm, again, another tree essence. So automatically we think of the grounding abilities that an essence like this might have. And again, another example where the name is in what it's used for, but it's for overwhelm. And it's for those who feel overwhelmed by their personal and professional responsibilities. Another example of where we might be overcommitting to certain scenarios, and we might have signed up for more things than we bargained for. We might have signed up for more things than we physically, emotionally, mentally, or spiritually have the ability to take on right now. Elm can be a great essence for helping us prioritize. We're going to try and find some balance between what we can legitimately participate in and also what we legitimately just don't have any time or energy for. And so elm will help us meet our needs in that way. Golden amaranth. I really want to include this one. It has another kind of strengthening and supportive energy similar to the Missouri primrose. And this is going to be our last healing essence or healing meditation with golden amaranth. This is an excellent essence to help us trust and go with the flow. It really is this aspect of trusting that things are going to work out. Things are moving according to plan. So there's a big aspect of timing around this essence. And it's this thought that there's something that I want to achieve or accomplish, but I just need to allow the time for it. It's really an essence is reminding us that we can't force anything. And so this essence can be great for all the things, all of the symptoms of ADHD. So this sense of being easily frustrated, maybe feeling anxious, unfocused, ungrounded, worried, overcommitted. Golden amaranth will really put us back in our body and really remind us of the importance of trusting, helps us feel connected, protected, and guided. And amaranth is another one that will grow in our climate, which is really fun. And obviously it gets its name from its color. If you've ever seen amaranth, typically it's like a red or a maroon type color. And it's just a really beautiful essence. It's kind of, I'm trying to think, this is probably, yeah, this is another one that is nearly at the end of its bottle, which means that I have used it so often, and it is just really helpful and powerful. And I had it as part of some of my blends that I was offering at trade shows, so I tended to go through it very quickly. So that's due for getting restocked. And so lemon, and so yeah, there's 2 more essences. Lemon is a really neat essence for, again, working on that brain communication and really helping those right and left hemispheres realign better. And obviously it's doing this from an energetic perspective. It's not moving the physical body. It could, but it's probably not. Most of the time it's working on that energetic, emotional, and mental aspect. And this is an essence that helps us make decisions. Oh, not enough water today. Lemon essence helps us release stress and mental tension from the body. This is a great way for just kind of shaking it all out. Lemon is one of those essences that you might only need 1 drop of, and you'll notice a big change in your body. This would be another great one because it's strengthening for the whole body. It's also very strengthening for the physical body in general. I didn't mention any of those aspects, but it basically works head to toe on the physical aspects of the body, the lymphatic system, the neurological system, the digestive system. It's great on circulation even. So a lot of those physical aspects are also reflected in this essence as well. Sadly, this is not one that grows in my climate, but certainly in the southern US, we can find lemons. And we have lemon balm, and these are not to be confused because they're obviously very different. And This is an example where the energetics and the herbal side actually dovetail nicely because they are used for many of the same purposes. And so lemon balm encourages us to deeply relax. So again, I put this in the stress and anxiety category. It could easily just be in the focus and concentration category, but it's just a nice way of kind of organizing ourselves. And they'll be organized in a similar way on the handout. So tomorrow or the next day when the recording's ready, and I'll be sending you the handout as well. So you'll have a clear example of all the different essences and just a little takeaway that's a little bit easier to navigate than the presentation itself, but you'll also have the presentation in the recording. And so lemon balm essence helps reduce nervous tension, anxiety, nervousness, and hyperactivity. And one of the coolest things about it is that if you like to meditate, or if you just like to be in a more relaxed state, lemon balm can help us enter into an alpha state more easily. And so, of course, this is great for anyone who can't relax or chill out. And lemon balm would be another beautiful one to include in a sleep or insomnia blend. So this is kind of how we start to see different aspects of the same, but when we're putting together a blend like that, we're including multiple flowers that have similar benefits. And we can also, attack different symptoms in a similar, like have a flower essence that addresses this symptomatic picture, and then a flower essence that addresses this symptomatic picture, and then the blend itself is intended to obviously shift the physical, emotional, mental body, whatever we're trying to do. So if I'm doing a sleep or insomnia blend, for example, I might include this one and white chestnut as 2 examples. I might include like 3 for sleep relaxation at a max, and then 1 or 2 that would be also supportive depending on what the person is experiencing as well, because you want to really have a blend that's going to work on all aspects, as long as there are no essences in there that are obviously activating and that are going to keep us awake when we're trying to go to sleep. So there's quite an intuitive aspect that goes into when we're developing these custom blends. I just mentioned custom blends because it's kind of the easiest way to trial out and experiment with a lot of these flower essences, because if you're not using the essences regularly, you might buy 5 to 10 different ones, and then the price just skyrockets because 10 essences might be $100 or $125 of tax. Whereas if you're doing a custom blend, you're probably paying somewhere between like $35 and $45, and depending on whether or not you include a consult. So much more reasonable way of actually using flower essences. So I just love that as an option for people. But now it's time to try the golden amaranth, which I mentioned again is one of my favorites. And so we'll just recenter ourselves, settle your feet. You can take 1 or 2 deep breaths, close your eyes if it feels comfortable. I'm going to share this essence the same way I did before. So 2 drops. I have to really dig down to the bottom of this bottle. Love me some golden amaranthus. So 2 drops in the palm, rub them together, and then I'm sending you the frequencies. And again, if you think this essence could benefit you, just set your intention to receive. You'll probably feel a shift, either physically, emotionally, mentally, right away. Sometimes it takes a little bit, but these essences are powerful in that they can really reach to all corners of the earth. Being in a shared field as we are, and especially being live right now, it's a great way to access the benefit of these frequencies. See, this one feels similar to Missouri Primrose in that it's very grounding and supportive and just very loving, compared to the habanero, which is really like, let's get this party started. Very much you feel the hot energetics that a habanero pepper might have, and it's very much about kickstarting into activity and really just launching them. So very different energy from these 2, which are a lot more supportive and really trusting and intuition and that aspect of coming back to ourselves. So that is the last essence I want to talk. And I do want to just mention, these are mini healing sessions, obviously, but it is possible to experience physical sensations. You can experience feelings or emotional aspects might come up now. They might come up later on. They might even come up tomorrow. Pay attention to any changes, insights, or information that you might get or that might come through over the next couple of days. And I love if you can pay attention to your dreams, any events or coincidences, synchronicities that might come through in your life, because it's really interesting to see how some of these patterns around these essences will show up. And I'm doing this because I'm getting the benefit of these essences even more. I could do without any more habanero, but the other two are just such a calming, relaxing energy. And so, I put in this promo code too. If there are, as I mentioned, there are any essences that you're interested in, you can get 10% off any essences, and you have just shy of a month or about a month to use it. And all of these essences that I mentioned here today, even if they're not listed on my website, you can order them as single essences or as a custom blend. So if you already know in advance what essences you want, custom blend can be great. There's also smaller sizes as well, so you can do like a single essence of whatever you're interested in. It's just a neat way to be able to increase some essences that you probably won't be able to access anywhere else. A lot of my essences come from all over the world. I have a lot from the US, obviously, and then with shipping and the exchange rate, it ends up being quite expensive. I also have essences from Europe. I have essences now from Mexico, and the Mexican essences are really cool. I got those just in January, part of a set, and they actually will not ship outside of Mexico. So I had to be in Mexico to pick up these essences, and I had them shipped to a FedEx location, and then I had to like come out of this rural area that I was in, and it was a whole exciting adventure in Spanish. So the Mexican essences are, hopefully I'll be talking about more of those in the future, but I have to translate all of the materials first. But the Mexican essences are really interesting because those are ones that my son is automatically drawn to for some reason. That's kind of the set that he always goes to in my office. And I've mentioned on many workshops and webinars, but ever since he was born, he's had flower essences. So I use flower essences actually in the belly button as a way to anchor him on earth. And he's been using essences ever since. And I let him pick out his own. And because I truly believe that children who are in tune, and a lot of the children that are coming in now are, it really helps them kind of get that grounding that they need and kind of process a lot of the energetic and emotional junk that is going on the planet right now. There's so much stress and anxiety in particular. So a friend of mine thinks that children like my son might be able to actually see essences as particular colors. So they might have a certain aura or something around them that allows the children to pick them so readily, because I would say that he's probably never wrong in any essences that he picks for himself. And most people are not either. Most people do intuitively know, like if you hold a bottle, one thing that's interesting about habaneros, that if you hold the bottle or even if you smell it, if you're not ready for the essence, then you're going to have a bit of a reaction or almost like a repulsion to it. At least that's what the founder has mentioned before, that you can have a physical reaction to it, and that signals that the body is actually not ready for it. So habanero is kind of an example of really strong essence, but most people will intuitively pick the essences that they need. And that's part of the reason why you may just realize that you stop taking an essence, you stop taking your custom blend because you no longer need it anymore. So you might take it for 20 days and you just realize like, oh, I'm not taking it anymore. And it's partly just because you've realized, hey, I need to either move on to something else or I need to take something else. So it's just amazing how intuitive the body really is, especially when it comes to essences, which are constantly interacting with our energetic field. And so a couple upcoming events I wanted to mention. I'm doing one on vibrational essences for grief. I just created that one today. So that's going to be in early December. That's another free workshop webinar that I'm doing. It'll be an hour usually, and it's online. And then if anyone's interested in the Akashic Records, I'm doing a group session, which is super fun. That's going to be on November 22nd. And so I'm hoping to do I try to do at least one essence workshop every month, but depending on how busy I am, I'm not planning one for November. So December will be the next one, and then into the new year. Yeah, I have some other events coming up, but they're not really related. So, do we have any questions? And like I said, you're welcome to unmute yourself, or you can put it in the chat. And Daniela, I am guessing that you're referring to the healing experience, and that one is habanero. And absolutely, I need impatience as well. Always. And so does my husband. He's like the typical go, 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 push it to the max, and then collapses because he's a projector in human design. So, but yeah, comfrey is the more nervous communication, brain communication, and kind of rebalances those aspects, but I wasn't able to find that one, so I forgot to update the slide because I expected to have comfrey and I just didn't. Yes, feel free to type your questions, Michelle.
I do have a question, Ashley.
Wonderful. Let me see. Let's see.
What kind of a blend would you recommend, or which essence would you recommend in place of a prescription for Concerta?
I I'm going to refer back to my disclaimer, which of course we don't want to, the biggest challenge is getting into an allopathic mode where you just want to say,
Mhm.
okay, this one equals this one and this one equals that one. You'll maybe tell me a little bit about what the symptoms are that are related to that prescription.
Anything and everything ADHD, inability to focus,
Yeah.
distractibility, all of that.
Yeah, so even like if you wanted to make it really simple, I just use the 4 or 5, well, I think there's at least 5 essences that are in that focus and concentration aspect. Like if it's focus, concentration, attention that there are the big issues, you can
Mhm.
pull out those ones and just do a custom blend based on that. And I think in that case, I'd include at least 5, and you could, as I mentioned, go up to 7 different essences if you really wanted to. But that
Mhm.
would help address some of the aspects. And the most beautiful part about that is that if you're on doctor prescribed meds, which of course is so common with ADHD, we can just use these alongside them because we're essentially just using them to support the body, right? There's going to be there's no contraindications because there's no physical matter in it, which is really lovely, right? Because so many that's the real aspect of herbal tinctures and herbal remedies is that there's going to be contraindications between the physical plant matter and the actual drugs, medications themselves. So yeah, essences are beautiful that way and really can be used alongside anything.
Thank you.
Yeah. Um, yes. Yes, Michelle. So the question is when you're using multiple essences, how would you administer them? And of course, you can, as I said, you can buy a bunch of singles and they cost more, but yeah, absolutely, you can make your own custom blends as needed. And the nice thing is too that if you're just using them in an acute scenario, you're not caught having to use the entire custom blend that you might be, for example, developing for ADHD. You can just use a single essence. Like you could use Black Eyed Susan just to help you calm down if you're racing around. You just find like it's a day where you're just like go, 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 and you've got all the things on the go and your mind's whirling and you just kind of can't focus and kind of calm down. You could just use Black Eyed Susan just for the day, like just use it 4 times during the day. And so that's the nice aspect too. And like I said, even though I've categorized these this way, you can use these single essences for so many other purposes other than, the small little summary that I've done. And so there's always multiple ways of interpreting, and even all of these essences have really clear physical indications for them. So we don't want to eliminate the fact that, oh, hey, I've got a headache coming on, for example. I know it's because my mother-in-law was just over and had a really difficult challenge with her. We're not necessarily needing to take the custom blend that we might have, but we just might need a couple drops of something to calm us down. I have a great mother-in-law, but we all need a little bit of extra support sometimes. And then, of course, when they're single essences, then you could, if you're just using them for your kids, for example, you could just drop them in the bath and you could just put them in their water or whatever they're having at dinner. So it's a nice way to kind of like, I love with kids too, if you have single essences, and depending on obviously how you're using them, but and how old they are, you could just put 1 or 2 drops and they can put their own medicine in their cup, which is a really fun way of getting them to participate in their own self-healing, which I love.
I found what
Depending.
you said about putting a couple of drops in water, but then every time you take a sip, it's a dose. Really interesting. Can you expand on that?
Yeah. That is essentially because it's an energized, like even a water bottle, for example, like this is a giant water bottle. So I would probably put more than 3 to 4 drops in here, but maybe 10 drops. And it's really because the entire water has become energized as a result. So it's a great way to extend your essences, which is probably one of the best ways to use them. Is like just use them in water and take a sip whenever you need to. Typically what I do is I'll have one, just a smaller glass of water, like maybe I don't know, a highball or something like that. I think that's what they're called, but a highball glass, and have that potentized for the essences that I want to take. If I'm sitting at my desk, for example, highball glass, 5 drops, 4 drops of an essence, and then I'll take one sip of that, and then I'll just have regular water. So I won't forget like, oh, it's not time for my next sip of water, because we may not, be necessarily measuring it. But if you're using it for a chronic issue, it's really important to kind of use it for 3 to 4 times a day. And if it's more of an acute scenario, you might use it more often, but you're going to use it for less time. So that's something to also consider, is what are we actually addressing? If it's ADHD and we're actually actively dealing with those symptoms, then we're going to use it more for chronic. We want to use it 3 to 4 times a day, and we want to use it for a longer period of time. Oh, excellent.